Welcome back to Hack Asia 2022. We are thrilled to have you back with us here this afternoon. And we are very honored to have Karina Bellin from W Hub here with us to give you all the tips you're going to need on pitching. Now, as we went through yesterday, we learned from a lot of entrepreneurs yesterday. We had some people from 30 under 30. We had some people who were past winners of Hack Asia back in 2020. Some other people who had worked with Jardines over the years, startups, and the different ways they had worked with us. Each of them gave their tips and their hints for how they would work with us and try and win on Thursday. But I know you are a genius at this, so I am going to hand over to the master of pitching, Karina, and she's going to share with you an amazing set of tips. I would listen really carefully because as I recall the last time I listened to you do this, there was some excellent, very pragmatic, very practical tips, which actually the guy who won the last time,
yes,
was convinced worked for them.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Anne. Great pleasure to be here again. I totally think you oversold what is coming in the next hour. I'll try to do my best and live up to the expectations. But welcome everybody to another workshop, another great workshop. Fantastic. And I'll get here into the pool position, make sure that the computer works nicely here. And yeah, welcome to another workshop of Hack Asia, and welcome to Hack Asia 2022, a brilliant hackathon. You already made the right choice to be here with us today. So I'm going to run you through some pitching tips just very quickly. Who are you dealing with right now? So my name is Karina Bellin. I'm co-founder of W Hub and Angel Hub. So W Hub, we're the largest startup community connector and ecosystem accelerator, very proudly headquartered here out of Hong Kong, but with over 500 partners around the world. We made it our passion to help startups and startup teams grow and scale their business, and therefore connect them to all the resources they need, including recruiting, including getting visibility, including getting know-how and access to such wonderful resources such as Hack Asia. We're also behind SIS, Scale Up Impact Summit, which is a core event of the Start Me Up Hong Kong Festival. Hope you're going to join all in May. And we love actually to give all type of stakeholders access to the ecosystem and do a lot of corporate co-innovation programs, including hackathons and that lovely collaboration with Hack Asia that goes for years now. I'm also co-founder of Angel Hub, and Angel Hub is the very first and still only SFC licensed tech company investment platform for professional investors that want to invest into companies that are scaling here in Asia. We're also a VC ourselves in the sense that we have our own fund and invest and back these companies and solving the pain points of fundraising, time, access, and know-how. So yes, we get a lot of pitches, and I'll share, some of the things that we learn along the way. Now you can see a couple of other things. I'm from Germany. I'm German. I had the chance to spend some of my years as a child in the US, and my better half by now is definitely French. My co-founder is French, and my husband as well, two different people, and knows both of them. Yeah, came to Asia already in 2005, first 7 years in Japan, and then here over 10 years in Hong Kong. Had the pleasure to work for a big multinational corporation, Procter & Gamble, for 15 years. They brought me here to Asia, also all around the world, but I discovered my startup passion here in Hong Kong. So passionate that I'm involved in a lot of other organizations and think tanks, and some backed by the Hong Kong government, by the Senate in Berlin and Germany, and other initiatives. But I'll spare you, that's enough about myself. If you really want to get to know more about me or what we do at W Hub and Angel Hub, you have the email addresses over here. So just reach out, you're just an email away. So with that, we'll get into pitching and just some basic tips and tricks. So Anne totally oversold you the next 60 minutes, what's going to come. But I think I always start by saying, arguably, pitching is much more an art than it is a science. And we could argue long hours about if a successful and great pitch is really a guarantee for a startup being successful or a startup team being successful. Maybe not, but I would argue, you as a founding team should at least be able to convey your business idea and your business solution in a very concise, clear, impactful, and passionate way. And that is something I think that should everybody know how to do and learn how to do. And it's not that complicated on the other hand, because at the end of the day, there are only two parts to a successful pitch: the project and the team. Now, if you think about, startups that go all the way from ideation to, unicorns and successful exit, you could say that the earlier in the stage of your startup life, the more the team arguably becomes important. Why is the team more important than your project? Well, first of all, you could argue you don't have a lot of product lines or, success cases or milestones or tractions to share because you're still very young. But arguably even more importantly, because as a team, you will go and embark on a very difficult journey. Entrepreneurship is a bumpy ride. So what the judges and the investors really want to see is, do they have confidence in you as a team to really tackle all these challenges, to be open to feedback, be that resilient entrepreneur that is ready to pivot, that is ready to take on feedback, to listen to everybody, but at the same time make up your own mind in deciding what's right or wrong for your business. So again, for some of you, I guess it's the first time that you come together as a team around a specific problem statement maybe. So again, don't underestimate the importance about talking about the team. That's why some pitches arguably start by talking about the team first. It also avoids the pitfall of potentially running out of time at the end and then totally forgetting, getting too passionate about the problem they're solving, your solution, and you're like, oh, wait a second, bummer, time over. I don't have a chance to talk about the team anymore. So here's just some simple tips about, talking for the team. Obviously, what you really want to instill in your either judges or investors is confidence in you. So if you're not a first-time entrepreneur, if you have been on this bumpy ride, if you know exactly what you have signed up, of course, that actually gives confidence, and you should talk about it. And then there are some basic rules if you talk to more Asian type of investors or judges, or American or Western type of judges. If you go into a pitch in Silicon Valley and say, you know what, I tried to build 20 companies, I failed miserably, but look, this is everything I learned. So now I'm ready and show how resilient I am because I'm doing it all over again. And this time I figured it all out, might really score high points. I do admit that here, people would be a little bit doubtful if you only talk about your failures. So you probably want to highlight a little bit more all the know-how and the success cases you have established over the past to once again, give confidence that your team is the best positioned to tackle the pain point that you decided to solve. Now, coming back to that, it is super important that you talk about the skill set and the capacity that you have as a team. Right? And there's a pitfall to avoid. I mean, on the one hand side, you really want to be very, very concise and get your message across very quick. And again, give confidence that you have the know-how, you know exactly what it takes to build your solution in a successful way. So we see pitches like, oh yeah, we're a bunch of, ex-Facebook, ex-Google, ex-Tencent, ex-Alibaba, whatever you want to say, which is actually on the one hand side a little bit too buzzy, and on the other hand doesn't really give an explanation of why are you the best position. So judges and investors typically don't do that for the first time and are not that easily impressed by just you hitting these buzzwords and these famous brand names. So you would really rather say like, I have been involved in the tech department at a certain company. And provocatively I say, it's better that you say that you have been responsible for the entire CRM process at Starbucks than making the coffee at Google. Okay, so again, just find a very, very, of course, concise and interesting way to show your know-how. And you can, of course, say if you have worked with brilliant minds and in wonderful organizations, if you have been working with Jardines before, if you had done an internship, I mean, perfect, fine, obviously stated. But again, go one step a little bit deeper and say exactly what are the skills and know-how that you have acquired. And then once again as well, make sure that it really fits your role in the company, right? If you have always been working in marketing and now you're the CTO of your new startup and venture, again, there might be some question marks arising in the minds of the judges or / investors. Now, with that, again, we all know that most of you are probably still a very, very young team, and you cannot have all the resources and skill sets and talents and headcount in your company to bring, your current venture all the way to a successful exit. That's totally normal. And it's totally advisable to say, well, because we know that we're not having all the talents combined in our team today, we reached out to very trusted mentors and advisors. And you can state, how you have interacted over the past, days and workshops with, for example, the wonderful mentors that Jardines provide, and say, look, these are the things and the insights that we have learned. So again, first of all, we're going to talk later about, instilling, confidence and trust even more. That totally gives it. And it also gives people the insight that you have understood what it actually will take to bring your solution forward, and that right now you are maybe lacking of it, getting it from outside, but are very, very conscious that once you have the money or once the time is right, these are the people that you definitely want to bring on board. So that arguably is already, the most important part of talking about the team. I typically do this workshop, in front and live with other people, and I can see, people in the audience like, I'm losing them, or they're having questions, or people are raising their hand. I'm just going to look over to Anne. I don't know if we get any questions already online. Just want to remind you, don't be shy, on YouTube. You can post your questions directly over there, and very happy to make this as interactive as possible for an online workshop.
We're good right now.
We're good right now? Okay, so we'll go on. And don't worry, if anything pops up later on, you can go ahead and let us know. So the second big part is then really the project, the solution that you got to talk about, your business. And therefore, again, there are arguably only 5 elements to it. So what's the problem? You talk about the solution, give a demo, you talk about competition, you show about how you're going to make money, because you're not an NGO, you're not here, you're for profit here, and you're going to talk about, tractions and milestones. So therefore, typically, again, I throw the question out there, what do you think? What comes first in these 5 elements? Do you first talk about the problem, or do you first talk about the solution? So I don't know if anybody is brave enough to hit something on the YouTube channel. I'll give you 2.
Not yet.
1, 0. Okay, no. So let me break it to you. So please, one of the biggest pitfalls is we see people and pitches starting with the solution first. And I totally get it. You have been working on that over the past days. You're so proud of what you have built, and you're totally in love with your solution, and you want to show it off to the world. Fully understand, fully get it, but that is not the most impactful way. And let me try to demonstrate you. So typically, I'll just try to find some very stupid example to give you a difference between a pitch that starts with the solution first versus a pitch that starts with the problem first. So if I say, like, look at this very beautiful device here. So our team has come up with a deep tech device which incorporates cutting edge technology, uses the latest in artificial intelligence and visual and machine identification and learning and image recognition to be able to cut the internet connection of any given device in a room without interfering with the overall connectivity of that room. So typically at that point, I look around and I'll ask people, what do you think? Pretty cool, no? I mean, would you be ready to buy it? Maybe some super geeks are like, oh my gosh, I was trying to build this my whole life, and you found it. This is amazing. Where can I buy it? Well, now I'll give you another example, okay? And then you let me know if that makes it a little bit more impactful and a little bit more understandable for you. If I say, okay, in 98% of households with children aged under 12 and under, parents complain on the excessive consumption of screen time of their children. And moreover, 80% of main root causes of ADHD caused in younger children is due to excessive screen time. That's why we have developed this amazing device that uses latest technology that is able to connect and cut the internet connectivity of any given device in a room without interfering with the overall connectivity, allowing with this, several devices to work simultaneously, and that solves problems in context of working from home and homeschooling. So again, I look around, and then depending on who I have in the audience, some people may not have children, some people may not agree, but at least, some people try to understand the problem that we're solving, and that there might be a real pain caused, and that there is a necessity for this device. The other thing that is really interesting with that is it helps people to imagine exactly, different type of contexts and root sources where it might be really important, where some people have access to the internet and some others don't. And then you can actually put this into different contexts and say, well, this is one use case. The interesting thing is we have another use case, which, for example, would allow this device, in your own room or in your own garden to disconnect any drones flying over you without you interfering with the rest of your security system. And then you can even go further down the path, and then people start realizing, oh, there might be even some other security and related use cases that might apply to this solution. But this is the whole point, right? So it is much more powerful that you first dramatize and engage the people about the problem that you're solving, that you show exactly that you understand what the problem is, so that then the solution comes kind of like the savior, and then people are not re-questioning why you spend so much time and so much effort on the different functionalities that you're developing. Now, at the same time, there is a pitfall to be avoided. If you are solving a problem that is very, very well known by a lot of people, and particularly think the ones that you are pitching to your judges or your investor, don't waste time to overly dramatize, okay? And I'll give you another really funny example, which is problem of finding a parking spot in Hong Kong or any other big city, right? For everybody who has a car knows how painful it is to find parking spots, particularly during rush hours. So you can very, very quickly just go in and say, parking is really a big issue, and my God, tons of people have tried to solve it. Now we came up with a very, very innovative way. Versus we have seen pitches on people coming in and saying, oh, you know what, there was this one day where I really wanted to change jobs, and I had this very important job interview. So in the morning I had to go and drive my car, and I was late, so I took the coffee, and then I was driving around and really getting late, and because I couldn't find a parking spot, I became nervous, and then I started pouring the coffee over my white shirt, and so I had to go into my job interview, with a dirty shirt. That would not have happened if I would have found a parking spot, or have an app or a tool to find free parking spots. So you get it, it's kind of like over dramatizing, you're wasting time, and very often pitches are kind of like short. So you really want to find exactly the right balance, okay, for that. Now, the other thing is, one more pitfall that we come across is in live pitches where people want to engage the audience. And in general, it's true. You want your audience engaged, right? And you want to also prove a point. For example, look, what about who has the problem of X, Y, Z? Now, you can do that when you know your audience very, very well. Or if you kind of like strategically have positioned people that's going to raise their hand. But if you're trying to make a point about we're solving a problem that is out there and really pressing, and you ask the question and nobody raises their hand, you're kind of like missing the point, right? And be very careful, because very often in these pitching competitions, the audience is there to be entertained, and maybe some people are shy. So if they don't raise their hand, doesn't mean they don't have the pain point, right? But they're just not raising their hand, and you kind of like look really, really strange out there with nobody raising their hand. Or asking open-ended questions. Don't waste your time. The very problem that we see is when you start asking open-ended questions, and then you ask and wait for people to come, and you're wasting time, and you're not necessarily sure about the answer that you're getting. So these again are some of like the typical pitfalls that we see when people start off their pitch. Okay, I would move on to the second point then. So we're clear, we clearly identify the pain that we're solving, who is having the pain, and how important it is to solve this pain point. Not sure of any questions, Anne, at this point in time.
Well, Chloe Tang did come up with the right answer. She did suggest that it should be a problem.
Amazing, Chloe, absolutely. Fantastic. So then it comes to giving a demo. So again, and I do really, really intentionally say give a demo. So we're coming now into the part of the solution, and very often, a demo actually says so much more than 1,000 words. Also, because you really embark the audience, either again, your judges or your investors, in terms of how exactly you're solving your this pain point, what your product or service truly delivers. Very often we hear like, okay, we are a platform. Okay, well, a platform is not a solution in itself. A platform is a way to deliver a certain solution. But what does the platform actually really do? Does it provide insights? Does it provide connectivity? Does it bring people in touch with each other? Does it sell things? Is it a marketplace? So again, you really want to make sure that you go into detail and not just, kind of like overly describe who you are without really trying to understand how that exact functionality of your platform, of your device, really solves the pain point. And that's where a demo is very powerful. Now, the only other thing, obviously, to watch out is when you give a demo, you need to make sure that it works. And again, talking about internet connectivity without even having somebody there trying to interfere with what you have, make sure that you practice it, okay? Sometimes also, because again, you're working on this solution maybe only for a short amount of period, some of the onboarding might still take time. So what you can do, what some people do is instead of doing the demo really live, is they record or they screenshot the demo, right? And with that, you can also obviously, tweak. You're all good, I guess, in video editing, some of the waiting times, or if you, for example, you have a verification process that is part of your onboarding process, like if you would need to start connecting different devices, or you type in and then you need somebody on the back end to say yes, all of this, obviously, you can speed up. And again, you can actually focus exactly your attention and the attention of your judges on the part that you really want to bring forward. Okay, so this is really something very important. We got a question. Fantastic.
Question.
I'm craving to make this as interactive as possible.
So Muskan wants to know,
yes,
how much time do they really need to prepare for a presentation that would be 5 minutes?
Oh, okay, fantastic. So we'll actually go through, I think, if the question is, when you have 5 minutes, how you allocate the 5 minutes over the 5 different elements that we were just talking, arguably the project and the team, and then the 5 elements inside? Or is the question really about how much time to prepare for it? I don't know if Muskan wants to clarify.
Yeah.
It's to prepare for it. Okay. Well, I mean, arguably, it really depends how many times we have done that before. I would tell you one, or let's say three tips. Okay, first of all, don't wait until the last minute, because particularly if you do it for the first time, you always underestimate how long it actually takes. Secondly, you really want to rehearse it over and over again. Okay, we'll come to that a little bit later in how to prepare not only for your pitching session, but also for successful question and answers, because I'm already giving it a bit away. The pitch is not everything, because after the pitch you have the Q&A session, which is not to be underestimated, and arguably sometimes the even more important part to the entire pitching session. And then last but not least, obviously it's always great to start with the end vision in mind. If you start with, I'm gonna have 5 minutes, so I'm gonna present not more than, let's say, 10 slides. So if I have only 10 slides, I know I already need 1 slide for the team, so I have 9 slides left for the rest. And then here we saw it has 5 elements, so I'm probably gonna use 1 or 2 slides on the problem statement, and I'm gonna use 1 or 2 slides on the solution, and then I'm gonna talk about the other elements we'll go into, the competitive advantage, the monetization, and the traction. So it's always great to start with the end vision in mind, because also when you start building your solution, you're kind of like already know these are the type of answers I have to have for the questions, that basically these different elements provide. Okay, very good. Yeah, so that was about the demo. Let me think about any other
There's one other question on with the problem. So allocating time in your 5 minutes. The problem statement versus the demo versus the solution. Can you go over that?
How much problem versus demo? I think it would relate a little bit to the point that I made when you talk about the problem statement. If you're solving a pain point which you think is relatively new, that people are really not familiar with, you probably really need to spend a little bit more time in going into depth. Who are you solving the problem for? So again, it's very good to have concrete personas as an example. I think there's one of the pitfalls as well where we as founders might confuse addressable market, or how big the market potential is, versus being very, very precise at the beginning on taking one example of your early adopter or your key user at the very beginning. So go very small, very zoomed, very focused, right? Because I'll give you a very, very typical example. Something that I learned actually previously from my corporate career is, you know, when you start about, you know, nicotine patches, for those who smoke, you know, nicotine patches give you the value proposition of helping you to quit smoking. Right? So if at the beginning you show the power of your solution, that this is a device or a patch actually that really helps you to quit smoking, it is so powerful that other people who may not want to quit smoking but just need to stop smoking for a specific amount of time understand the benefit of your solution and will use it. Because at the end of the day, the interesting thing is with a lot of these nicotine patches, the biggest market size were not people who tried to quit smoking, were people who were going on a plane or a train ride and just were not able to smoke for a certain longer amount of time. But you see, if you go very, very clearly concise, you know, particularly if you target kids or if you target, even in adults, you know, the closer you go and say my target group are teenagers age 12. Because for those who have kids, you know, a kid 12 years old versus a kid 14 years old is totally different, right? And you can really start crystallizing what are the pain points that they're having. So then the solution becomes so much clearer.
Right, we still have the time allocation question. I'm sure you're going to get to that, like if they had 5 minutes or if they have 10 minutes, how should they allocate it? There's another question.
Well, arguably, I'm never gonna give you a blanket answer because again, my key message to you was it really depends. It really depends. If you have a problem that you're solving, like I'm solving the problem of finding a parking spot in Hong Kong, you spend these 10 seconds on the problem statement, right? You may want to go a little bit more into detail in some of the sub-elements, you know, about what that actually causes, and you may want to talk about how others try to solve these solutions later on. But at this point in time, you really, it's something where you need to spend way more time on the solution because everybody wants to have the solution. So many people tried. And when we can see some people just spending too short of a time, like I'm solving the problem of giving away credits for free or loans for free, because like, this is too good to be true, that cannot work. So you have to spend way more time on explaining then the solution, how it works, and how you're going to make money with it. Okay.
Oh gosh, there's lots of questions.
Fantastic! I love it. I love how you make the
all right.
interactive.
So
yes,
couple of things. Rainey wants to know. As a new company, we
Yes.
might not have all the capabilities to meet a big company's expectations. So can you share some experiences on how you can persuade and convince big companies to work with brand new companies?
Brilliant. We're going to talk about that in the part of milestones and traction. Because that's exactly one of the points where, again, everybody is very, very knowledgeable about you know, maybe now coming together for the first time. So there are ways of, again, instilling confidence on why they should bet on you and will be very much rewarded. Again, the first part, we already talked about the team, right? So again, the younger you are as a company, the more important is really to talk about your team and your skill set. And you're understanding that, you know, what it takes actually to grow that team and to grow that solution.
Okay, so I think there's another, Missy Tiff has a similar question, which is, should I focus my time on the judging criteria or convincing the judges to invest in me?
Okay, so right now I'm using the word investor and judge kind of like simultaneously. I always talk about investor and judge, right? Because at the end of the day, interestingly, you know, it's not going to be very, very different what they're looking into, right? At this point in time, just have your clear focus in mind, which is you're going to win HACK.ASIA 2022. So look at the judging criteria and try to hit the boxes on all of the judging criteria for sure. But I would be surprised if they would be very, very different from what any investor would be looking into.
Awesome. Hayden just joined in and he said, should I focus more on a beautiful presentation or a demo? Now, I think you covered some of this earlier in your tips to
Yes.
actually video the demo, right?
Exactly. So again, if you can show that, I mean, what is instilling more confidence than you saying, well, it's not only a super idea in my head, but I've already built it out and look, here's how it's going to work. Because again, for you, some of the things, because you have been working on this over the past days, you may not even realize that you're providing as a solution. And I think if you can show things, you stimulate the creativity also of your judges in terms of, oh, that is very, very interesting and very elegantly solved, or I have tried something similar before, but I've never seen that type of an execution. So that's really interesting. And they may even come up with ideas on how they're going to use your solution that you haven't even thought about. So yes, of course, a demo is always way more powerful than you're describing, right? But at the same time, again, the watch out is it has to work. And if you want to make sure it works, and if you're in a time crunch, then pre-record it, right? Absolutely.
Okay, so let's move on.
Let's move on a little bit. Yes. Okay. Very good. Because one of the other things is keep time always in mind, right? And I think we only have an hour, right?
Yeah.
But yes. So that was about the demo. And then, so again, we talked about you know, the tremendous problem that exists out there in the world, and then your solution comes as the savior. Well, to make sure that you are really the best positioned, right, you have to talk about the competition, right? So how are you solving this problem so much better than anything else that is out there? So the biggest pitfall, obviously, and again, that's typically how we differentiate first-time entrepreneurs from people that are in the space for a long time, is don't say, I'm the only one having a solution to this problem. Because I can guarantee you with 99.9% or even 100% that this statement is wrong. It's not that I want to be offensive and, you know, tell that other people are as brilliant as you. That's not the point. But the thing is that there are also, you know, very, very different ways, and sometimes we don't even think about substitute solutions on how people are actually, you know, solving specific problems. So again, it's very, very important that you kind of like think even about a competitive solution in a very, very broad way. And now, having lived through COVID and having lived through very interesting times where market dynamics, consumer behaviors shift so quickly, there's a huge benefit of you know, really being able to say, look, we're looking at it in a very, very broad way, and there are different people trying to solve this problem in different ways, but look, this is exactly the reason why people are going to stay with us, why our solution is going to be so much more sticky than the ones of others and so much more valuable. Okay, so first of all, please don't do the mistake of saying we're the only ones doing what we're doing, because very often, you know, even the judges that are listening to you already have one or two people in mind, and maybe also because they didn't fully understand exactly how you're different yet at this stage, because you still have to explain that. Okay, so there's another thing then, again, if you typically, you know, when we have the competition charts, we have these famous, okay, the axis, you know, the diagram, and then you kind of like show the quadrant where there's nobody playing and you're the only one playing in that space. Again, be a little bit careful, first of all, because choosing the axis is not always very, very obvious, and sometimes also a little bit limiting, because you're basically limiting yourself on 4 axes. And I would suggest a different way. Again, that is a little bit more A, humble, but B, also then realistic, where you say, you know, I'm looking into where my solution covers all the basic needs that my solution needs to cover, and there are 1 or 2 areas where I'm so much superior, and that's actually going to make all the difference. We call it right to play and right to win. Okay, so it's also because sometimes other you know, pitfalls could be that you only talk about where you're better, and then you totally forget that there are certain basic needs that your solution is not providing, which arguably is going to be a bummer for you to really be successful in that market. So if you can show, like, look, for example, there are certain basic needs that my platform, so if it's a platform play, right? So it's a platform play. My onboarding process is very, very smooth. It's not the best in the world, but it's very, very smooth. Then the navigation on my platform is very, very clear. Maybe not the best, again, can improve, but then, you know, the type of information that you find there, or the type of access to a specific group of people that you need to solve this problem, is so much better than what anybody else in the market currently can provide. And that's why we're going to be so much better. And that's why people are going to sign up, and that's how we create value. So that's really, really important part. If we talk about what type of competitive advantage, there are different classifications. For those who love to read Peter Thiel. Now he's actually started getting a little bit older. Probably when you saw like 5 years ago, Peter Thiel was, I know Peter Thiel, and I read From Zero to One. So yeah, actually, but what's really interesting, what I really like in the book is he classifies it into 5 different types. And again, you have to be concise and quick. And if you can say like, look, I fall into the category where I provide, my competitive advantage is based on the network effect. Typical example, Facebook. There are tons of other, platforms. Facebook were not the first ones, they're not the last ones, but also one of the reasons why they acquired Instagram and WhatsApp and all of these, it's a network play. So if you are the one who have the most users signed up, that's how you provide value to it. That's how they could transform it from being a social networking app to actually an advertising platform, but that's a different story. So yes, network. So that could be one. The other one is obviously technology, okay? So the typical example of, technology being so much superior is Google Maps versus Apple Maps, okay? Who uses Apple Maps? I don't know, whenever I use Apple Maps, doesn't work as good. And that's also one of the reasons why on an Apple phone right now, you always have the choice to go on Google Maps versus Apple Maps. At the beginning, I don't know if you're not too young, you may remember that actually Apple was forcing people into Apple Maps versus Google Maps. But yeah, but it's a technology advantage. And obviously very often the question is about, IP or non-IP. I mean, for you, you're definitely too early stage right now, and arguably nothing is really always 100% protectable. The reason why Google was so much better is they put the focus on it. And I think at the peak, you really had like 100 times more technologists working on Google Maps than Apple ever. So anyway, so that's another one. The other one, brand design. Again, Apple itself is there a very good positive example on why people wanted to buy Apple. It was the branding, it was the design as a competitive advantage. You have other competitive advantage, which is, for example, access to specific resources, right? Obviously, that's very powerful if, for example, you're a platform on providing expertise, know-how in a very specific domain, and you can say, well, we have access to all these talent, and you can find these talent on our platform versus others. That is a barrier for entry. None of it is really ever sustainable, right? I mean, time changes, the market evolves, etc. But I think at this stage, it's great to show that you have at least so much more advantage for a specific period of time that allows you to always be a little bit ahead of the game.
So I think you've answered some of the other questions that are coming in. So Samho had asked the question during your speech of, is it important to say I'm the first versus I'm the cheapest, the fastest, or the most efficient? Now, when I've listened to you, what I've heard you say is focus on your value proposition, your unique value proposition versus being the first. So that's fantastic.
I love, actually, if I can say that in some industry and some markets, it's a huge advantage to be the first mover, but be careful, in some it's actually a huge disadvantage. And again, the books are full of it. It was not always necessarily the first one who became the market leader, but in some it is. So again, if you're very cognizant about that, then state it. If not, doesn't matter.
Okay. And so Laura had also asked, was it important to emphasize the uniqueness of the solution or leave it to the judges to understand? Do you have to be crystal clear on the uniqueness?
Again, I would really, really be crystal clear on the right to win. And again, if we take about different aspects, so I talked about the diagram, with the 2 axes. Very often we see tables now, right, where you have the different competitors lined up and you have different elements of your value proposition that you highlight, like cost, speed, design, usability, whatever it is, and then you see like you tick the boxes, your solution ticks the boxes everywhere, etc. I think it's even way more powerful when, again, you say we're comparable, but here, this one thing, we're so much better, and we think that's the key. At the end of the day, what a judge really wants to understand is, have you fully penetrated the pain point, and is the whole pitch that you're delivering very, very consistent? And there's nothing more powerful for you having a super consistent story that highlights a specific part of a pain point, a specific part of your solution, how that actually creates value, how people are going to pay for it, and how you're going to scale that. So I already went to monetization and traction afterwards. So that's so much more powerful. And again, don't don't fall into the pitfall on confusing addressable market versus being very precise. Because again, at the end of the day, it's not powerful if you're going to come in and say, I have this wonderful device and actually everybody in the world's gonna use it, or at a certain scale we're going to solve the problems of everybody in the world. It's just it's inconsistent. It's not clear. It's probably a wrong statement, and it's just not as powerful as you say. Okay, we clearly understand our early adopters, and from there we're going to do these and these learnings, and with that we fine tune the solution. So then we open up a larger market, and then we have different services that we add on, and that's how we're going to grow and scale. Okay.
I have one more question,
okay.
but
okay. Well, we'll have a little look at the time. Monetization. Okay, we can go relatively quick on that one to make up some time, because at this point in time, so you have actually shown that there was a gap in the market, right? So there is a problem, and you think there is no solution, but the solutions that are out there are not as good as they should be, and that's why you came up with this solution that's so much better. Okay, so you showed there is a gap in the market. Now you have to show that there's a market in the gap, so that people are ready to pay for it. So not only you understood the problem and you're creating value with your solution, but people are ready to pay for it. And the question is, how are they going to be ready to pay for it? And again, be decisive. Okay, again, show that you really took the time to be as consistent as possible. And once again, everybody knows that you're probably pretty young still, and that you may gonna pivot, that you may gonna change your mind, right? But if you go in again with the pitch where you say, okay, with this device, it's great because basically we're gonna have access to data and we sell data, and also because we know that there's a differentiated consumer base out there, so we're gonna implement a freemium business model. So sign up is free, and then we provide premium services where people can sign up for. And then given that we will have a lot of people using that device and promoting it over the platform, we're also going to make advertising income, because we will really get the interest of partners being able to advertise. So again, don't throw everything out there. Yes, I mean, at the end of the day, any type of product, you can think about different ways to monetize it, right? Freemium model, as I just said, or selling the data behind it, or advertising, or whatsoever. If you throw it all out there, some investors or judges might be really offended, because they're like, so what? So I'm gonna make up? Do you ask me to make up my mind what's gonna be the most likely way you're gonna make money, or you didn't even take the time to think about what is the best way to get money for your product and service? So be decisive. And if you have certain doubts, or if again you say there are probably several ways, then at least say we're gonna try this first. We're first going to try on our platform a freemium business model, because we think this is market standard, or we think this is consumer behavior, or this is what best captures our value proposition. Throw something out there, and then you can say, but we're ready to pivot if we can see that we're not getting the tractions that we need, and this is probably the backup way. Or again, you can say at the beginning, we're going to be very, very opportunistic and make money through advertising just to pay the bills. But the longer term vision is, we know that the full state of our product provides this type of value, and that's why we think consumers are ready to pay for it. Okay, so just don't be shy to be decisive, right?
Yeah, I think it's that one's going to be hard in a lot of the sustainability solutions we're talking
absolutely
about. So it'll be interesting to get to that one.
Absolutely, I fully agree. And again, I think what is really interesting as well is you can compare that to competition, because again, at the end of the day, you may not have all the experience for your own product yet. I mean, the product might not even be marketed at this point in time, but have a look or talk about having done focus groups or just a few interviews with some of your potential users, and say, well, we think this is the way we should go about it. And that's actually to traction and milestones, right? Which is really all about, obviously everybody wants to show the hockey stick, right? Everyone wants to say like, okay, we're going to get to millions and billions of users very, very quickly. At this point in time, you may have not even yet marketed your solution. I think when you cannot show traction, I mean, obviously nothing is as powerful as traction. At the end of the day, particularly as investors, you're like, who am I to tell you this is going to be successful, yes or no? It's your consumers who's going to tell you, who's going to tell the investors, who's going to tell the world if your product is going to be successful. So the real traction, right? And paid users, right? So there's a huge difference between providing services for free and asking people for money, right? And returning customers and all that. But at the beginning, you may not have this yet. So that's why instead of talking about traction, you talk about milestones. Okay, you talk about, okay, these are the milestones I need to hit for me to get to my target consumer base, my target revenue, my target whatever it is. Okay, what you can do at an early stage, again, just go small and say, well, you know, we tested this among 10 people. We tested it with one of the Jardines business units, right? And look, this is what they told us. So we tested it with 10 employees, and you know, 9 of them said it's really interesting, and 7 of them said I'm probably going to use it. So yes, it's qualitative, and you know, maybe not mean anything, but it's very, very powerful to you say, look, we made, you know, at least the effort trying to understand if this is something that creates value, and this is what we learned. This is the feedback. So that's just a very, very quick one on traction and milestone, because again, obviously there's more to say if the company exists for a long amount of time. So yeah, so basically that's it for the team and the project.
Awesome. One other question then here from Lewis, which is, I think it's really about the presentation itself. He said, how can I not repeat my slides, but connect the words I am using with the visuals?
Okay, you practice. I mean, we're gonna get into a little bit about preparing for the pitch and preparing for Q&A, but practice, and rehearse with others. So, you know, you might think you're saying certain things, and you might think that you convey certain messages. Just ask others. Very simple.
And in this instance, I mean, you know, when you were just talking about the traction, some people are startups, but some people are students who are trying to solve a problem, so they don't have traction, practically speaking, at the moment. So as I listen to you, I guess the thing that they can do right now is talk to the mentors within the Jardines organizations and say, if we did it this way, could you use it? So using the mentors over the next couple of days, recording their reactions. Yes.
Other tips is create a very, very simple survey, right? And throw it out to your friends or on Facebook, or, you know, like a Google form, a Google questionnaire, and get responses. So again, at this point in time, it's maybe small quantity and it's qualitative, but again, it shows that, and you can actually say what you tested. Because again, at the end of the day, what the judges wanted to understand, do you intrinsically understand the dynamics of your consumers, of the market, and how your solution, you know, is gonna interact with it? Because if you say, look, this is the question that we threw out there for us to test if people would really use the solution, and these were the questions we asked. That's brilliant insight. That shows how much you penetrated the problem, and that shows how much aware you are on what are the elements that you need to validate on your solution, or you may still need to change. And you can say, look, this is the feedback we got.
Right.
Very powerful.
One other thing, I know I've heard you speak before on the team and the dynamics of the team, and I know you use phrases like the hacker, the hustler, and
the 3 H's.
The 3 H's.
That's normally the question about, you know, what do you need to build a successful startup? You need the 3 H's: the hacker, the hipster, and the hustler. So, I mean, the hacker is the person who really, I mean, typically we're here in a startup to say it's a technology-based company, right? That you're losing technology. So you definitely need somebody who knows how to use technology, how to build products, right? And services with technological solutions. The hustler is the salesperson. So you need somebody to be able to sell it. So very often, probably that's also the person who delivers the pitch, right? So that's the guy who's good in storytelling. That's the guy who's really, really strong. And also then the go-to-market strategy, right? So again, if you're in a business of creating an app, you know, how do you cut through the noise and get downloads on the App Store, right? Or why do you actually need an app? You know, why is app the best way to deliver your product, your solution, your services? So you need that one, and you need the hipster. So which is a little bit the strategy, the strategic guy, and trying really to understand the overall business model again, in terms of the consistency on how the different elements fit together. So, and a little bit the visionary, right? So there's a little bit the person's like, okay, we got to tackle this problem and we're going to solve it in a very, very elegant way. So yes, and then of course you need tons of other people around, but at least at the core, you need these core services in there. When I say that's it, the question is that it really, and again, obviously it depends if it depends really if you're pitching to in judges or investors. If you're pitching to investors, that's not it, because then you have, of course, the ask. What you can do though, and that again is very, very elegant, very humble, and also shows that you're not only passionate about winning the competition, but really bringing a solution to life, is you ask for feedback. So either you ask for money or you ask for feedback. There's also funny sayings like, if you want money, ask for feedback. If you want feedback, ask for money. But at the end of the day, you're really there to ask a return on your delivering of your pitch. Now, the thing is that I said, and I really want to cover that. I know we only have 10 minutes left, but just some tips. Again, one of the pitfalls for people who pitch for the first time is you think by delivering the pitch, you're done. Right? But there is a Q&A. I guess there's a Q&A as well, right? And that is very often way more important, because the pitch is one way. So you can try to read the faces. Now, again, if it's online, I mean, I don't see your faces, so I don't know if people are asleep right now or not. So it's only one way. I have no clue if I'm really providing value to you or not. If you have questions, well, I luckily have Anne with me. She tells me if you have questions. But now it's two ways. And that is really, really powerful, and you have to prepare for it, because we have seen beautiful pitches, people rehearsing, it's like perfect, and then the Q&A starts and they're like, yeah, and then it falls apart. So again, how do you prepare, and how do you prepare for Q&A? So first is the power of why. So you go through your slides and you try to back up a rationale on the different elements that you say, and it even starts from the very beginning. I always take the example of WHub when we said, okay, we're here to provide startups with resources to scale their business, and therefore we offer recruiting services. Why? Well, why? Because it's important for startups when they grow along their journey to have access to great talent to bring their solution to life. And well, why WHub? Well, it's because we think that on other job recruiting platforms, startups do not come top of the list, like JobsDB, etc. Why is that the case? Well, because on these platforms, people showcase themselves differently with elements that startups cannot necessarily provide. And startups can provide, passion, can provide long-term flexibility, can provide different type of elements that typically, other companies cannot, because on JobsDB, you search by salary. Startups not always pay the highest salary, maybe by brand name. As a startup, you don't have a brand name, etc. So you go down, down, down. Don't want to spend too much time on pitching on WHub and the recruiting platform, but you go through it, right? And you have a very, very rational explanation for it, very concise, very crisp. And you do your research. Again, I tried a little bit at the beginning when I talked about, that's amazing device that I have here, to throw in numbers. It's so much more powerful to say, 93% of households have this problem, versus we think that a lot of people would love to see the solution, or maybe this could be a great way to solve that or that problem. Okay, rehearse already, full stop, rehearse, but rehearse with outsiders, because again, you're so much into your problem, your solution, you may not be aware of things that are inconsistent or that you take for granted, and other people just need to get onboarded. The best thing is if you have younger siblings or kids, rehearse with them. The most simplest questions are very often the best, or with non-tech savvy parents or grandparents, they very often ask the best questions. Know your key message by heart. So typically the torture test is at 3 o'clock in the morning. I wake you up and it's like, okay, what does your company do? And you go like, the great thing is also, if you have your key messages by heart, your first selling line on, say, like, hi, we're the company who's trying to solve problem A, B, C, and that's what we do. It's great because, it's kind of like when you pitch for the first time, it's a little bit freaky, it's a bit scary, right? And if you at least have the first 30 seconds, like rehearse, and you just go out there and say something, and you heard yourself talk, you heard your voice, you could see people, you can see it's actually not that bad, you're not going to die. You get confidence, and then, you can actually move on. And then be confident. So at the end of the day, again, everybody knows that your company probably not exists for the past 10 years, and there are still so many question marks and things unproven and things that need to be solved or maybe inconsistent or whatsoever. But be proud of what you did already, and be confident, because if you're not confident, who's going to be confident about you driving a great solution? And just a few more tips for the tough question, and then I can see if there are any questions out there still, is when you get a question. And again, the first time you get a question, it's probably a little bit scary because you have maybe gotten a question that you have not prepared for. Very often we hear people say, good question. So I understand why you say good question, and we're going to get to that in a second. But the thing is, very often the first question is tough, and you say good question, and then you get a second question, but you got into the game now and you're super confident, you're going to answer the second question straight away on the spot. And I've been a judge before, and whenever I'm the second or third judge asking a question and I don't get good question, I kind of like really feel offended, because why did my colleague who asked the first question gets good question? So that's one thing, be careful. But the other thing, more seriously, is the reason why you say good question is, and very often that's how people understand, it's like, oh, you get something that you may not have been prepared to, or you just need time to think about what is the answer. So in reality, you just want to gain time. So rephrase the question instead of saying good question, because like that, you gain time, and you also, it sinks in. You're like, okay, so you asked me the question. For example, you showed, and then it's about marketing, go-to-market strategy. And the judge asks you, okay, so I understand you go-to-market strategy, so you probably have to be on social media. So tell me, how much money are you going to spend on Facebook? How much money have you reserved for your Facebook ad? You're like, okay, may I just rephrase the question? So you're asking me, in our social media strategy, inside our go-to-market strategy, you want to know how much dollar amount we have earmarked or pocketed or forecasted to spend. So you ask the question, and while you're repeating it, you're kind of like, what did we do, right? The second thing is, and that's a little bit the cheeky one, right? Is you're going to rephrase and redirect the question. Because if, for example, you have not at all thought about your go-to-market strategy or how much money you should reserve for your Facebook ads, you may want to rephrase the question. Say, okay, so you asked me about our marketing budget on Facebook. So I get in the context of our go-to-market strategy, which we actually more focus on in-person events than social media advertising. So here's the answer. So we're going to do 3 events per week, and then you actually, answer and bring forward something that you think is really important on how to market your solution. Okay. The other thing is, again, it's very good to rephrase, because there is another pitfall, is when you get a question from the investor or from the judge, you're kind of like worried, oh my God, just before going on stage, I realized we totally forgot to think about our go-to-market strategy. So I'm sure the judge is going to ask me this question, and then they may ask a question that has nothing to do with it, and you just like, oh, see, they asked the question about go-to-market strategy. So again, they say like, oh, so how much are you going to spend on Facebook? And you're like, oh gosh, yes, and then you jump into it and say like, oh, I don't know, or you come up with a number that doesn't make any sense or so. You very often have this kind of like intrinsic thought that you have to jump on that question. So if you rephrase it, so maybe the person can tell you, no, that's not exactly what I wanted to know. I actually wanted not to know your overall go-to-market strategy, but more like, how do you get the word out, or how do you actually prove to get traction on your platform? Now, if this rephrasing and redirecting doesn't work, and the judge comes back and says, no, I explicitly ask you about how much money you're going to spend on Facebook, I don't want to know how much events you organize or whatsoever, then is this truth or trust, right? So it's like, then you can say, okay, gotcha. So if you actually believe it is really important for us to have a social media presence and to spend money, I have to admit, at this point in time, we have not evaluated it. But you know what? I'll take this as a feedback, and let me get back to you. Because that really instills trust then, right? It instills that, oh, okay, great, you're open to feedback, and you kind of like agree and you take it on. Because at the end of the day, and that's the last point, feedback is a gift. I mean, of course, you're here to win a hackathon, but you may be that passionate that your passion goes beyond winning the hackathon, but bringing a solution to life. So you may not win the hackathon, but you really get tons of great feedback. So again, get the feedback in, be very open, don't be defensive. And in contrast, like, oh, why did that judge ask me this question? There might be a thing around, and I'm going to get, after the competition, I'm going to get back and ask more, because I really want to find out more about it. Which is one of the things as well, is typically one of the pitfalls is taking too much time to answer a specific question, particularly if it's a question that you think is not important, because you want to get as much feedback as possible, right? You don't want to waste all your time on answering just one question. You want to get as many doubts out of the minds of your judges slash investors. Yeah. So any other questions about the two-way one?
No, there isn't a question on that. I think
Okay.
you've scared everybody. But there is one just has come in. But which is, what is the best way to handle a question I may not have had the best answer to?
Yes. So again, I think that's the truth and trust point, which is if you say, very interesting that you asked me this question. It's so first of all, maybe you are very much aware, as I said 5 minutes before going on stage, you're like, oh my God, if I get this question, I know we didn't have time to talk about it. Then you just say, you know, it's great that you that we're talking about this now. I don't have the answer exactly ready, but it's the next step in our milestones, you know, and tractions that we were going to tackle because we know it's important. And we know it's important because of ABC. And you can then say, you know, what we're actually gonna look at is like our target group, how big is it, how active is it on Facebook, if again it's a question about Facebook ads, etc. How active are they, how do we reach them, at what time, when are the receptive moments, what is the type of method. So all of that will help us to determine the exact marketing budget we have to spend. So yeah, or again, then just be like really truthful and say, okay, that's a great point. We haven't thought about it yet. It's probably a miss, but we'll get back to you on that.
Okay, excellent. There was one other question which I think was about how could they measure that the solution really does add value or is solving the target audience plan. And again, I think for this hackathon, you have so much access to the mentors.
The mentors, I was going to say.
Go to the mentors and ask them, you know, will this really solve the problem? They're as keen to solve the problem as you are. So that's what they're there for sure. We are out of time.
I know, that's why I just actually throw again my email address out there. I mean, you have the most amazing resources within the HACK.ASIA team, and again, the mentors, and there are your key stakeholders and your key target audience, right? So involve them, ask them. But if not, if there's any more technical things or
Attila just asked how long will the Q&A sessions be. I do believe they will be 5 minutes. Attila will confirm that to you, but I think that's right.
Yeah,
with the timing that we have on the day.
Very good.
But
and the objective was not too scary. In contrary, it's just to say, see, I mean, it's a lot about also how you deliver versus what you actually say. I mean, that's sometimes the frustrating part, right? And it comes back to being an art rather than a science. I think it's 80% of how you say things versus what you say. Even though, be careful with that, because I know the HACK.ASIA team and the judges are you know, very much looking into the real things behind your pitches. So
yeah, but I think in general, you'll have people there that are trying to help and trying to understand. Absolutely. So I think it will be absolutely fine. Oh my goodness, we're still getting questions coming in.
Getting questions.
What should we do if the answer is too long or too technically difficult to explain? Are there shortcuts to the answer?
Yeah, I think it's great to have these shortcuts ready, right? So again, the watch out is finding the right balance between sounding like too buzzy or too superficial versus going too much into the detail. I think what you can always offer is a short way to describe. So you said a short way to describe it is ABC. There are more technical details. I would suggest we can take that offline just to make sure that we can accommodate for more feedback. And again, you can see if a judge says like, no, I really want this answered now and insists, again, then you go deeper. But try to, I mean, that's again why we say it's about rehearsing. It's about rehearsing with outsiders. It's finding that way on describing something in a crisp way, relatively simple. And it literally is an art, right? I mean, everybody who has ever in his life or her life tried to write a one-pager on an entire business model, it is more difficult than writing 20 pages. So.
Absolutely. Just one last question here, which was somebody came saying, can we do a pre-recorded video? Now, I guess technically you can. Do you suggest that's a good thing or a bad thing?
No, I would not make it entirely pre-recorded because again, at the end of the day, the people also invest or slash judge the people, right? So they want to see you in action. And I would argue even, part of that passion of, I mean, there's nothing more powerful. That's our whole mantra and philosophy about startup passion. I mean, we say there's nothing as sexy as somebody who's passionate about something, but it is truly this sparkle in your eyes when you start talking about the problem, when you start talking about your solution, that I think no video can actually really cut across. So yeah, you can, part of your solution, you record it, but show your passion, show your personality.
Excellent. Okay, and we have confirmed that for the initial rounds, it will be 10 minutes for presentation, 5 minutes for QA. In the grand final, if you get there, it's 5 minutes elevator pitch, and then 2 minutes on questions, so based on the timing available.
2 minutes Q&A. Okay, yeah, very good. So again, actually, like be super crisp with your answers. 2 minutes is not a lot.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you're gonna, if the pitch is shorter than 5 minutes, you give that as Q&A.
Yeah, but we'll see how it goes.
We'll see how it goes. But again, that's.
I've seen some very nice judges in the past who said, "Oh, you didn't do a demo. Could you show me a demo?" As the question.
Exactly.
So we might have nice judges. We might not. Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you to everybody for your incredible.
Yes, we'll stop sharing here for a second.
Sorry, I might hear. I was the person behind.
Exactly. Well, it was so much nicer because again, like talking to a screen is obviously not as engaging and fun.
But there was tons of questions and great questions online. So obviously you hit a very sensitive topic for everybody. Everybody wants to do a great presentation at the end of the day. So thank you so much for giving these really practical tips to everybody, and best of luck.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. I hope, well, you are all winners already, given, I guess, the wonderful feedback that you're getting. But yeah, best of luck.
We'll see you all on Thursday.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.